I found a creature that shouldn't exist. Its bones said one thing, but its DNA said something impossible. The first time I saw it, I was half asleep, scrolling through an old geological archive at 2 in the morning. The image looked ordinary at first. A fossil labeled specimen 47 bytes, anomaly of Satalis Formation. But when I zoomed in, I froze. The skeleton didn't belong to any known lineage. The beak looked avian, the limbs reptilian, but the ribs curved like armor, fused with crystal patterns that shimmered under light. It felt like staring at a volucious typo. I couldn't look away. The caption beneath it said a name that translates to the paradox bird. Scientists described it as a transitional species between early avians and reptiles. But the problem was, there were no fossils before it. None. It just appeared in the record one day, perfectly formed, right after the world's biggest extinction event. The Permian catastrophe, when almost all life had been erased. So how does something new appear from nothing, when there's no lineage to evolve from? That's what pulled me in. When I reached out to the original excavation report, the curator told me something strange. The bones weren't fossilized the way they should have been. They weren't rock-hard mineral replacements. They were still partially organic, almost preserved. Inside the bone cavities were traces of a metallic compound. Magnetite, the same mineral migratory animals used to sense Earth's magnetic field. But this was different. The magnetite wasn't scattered randomly. It was woven through nerve channels, almost like wiring. This thing hadn't just felt the planet's field. It navigated it, like a living compass. That discovery alone should have made headlines, but it didn't. The entire report was buried under an internal archive, classified after a brief presentation in 1984. The reason given, irreproducible biological anomaly. I couldn't stop thinking about that phrase. Irreproducible, as if evolution itself refused to take responsibility for what it had made. The deeper I went, the weirder it got. Radiometric analysis showed those bones were 248 million years old, right after the Permian extinction. But among the remains, another imprint was found. Smaller, clearly juvenile, meaning it reproduced fast. If it appeared when the world was dying, it didn't just survive. It thrived. And then came the part that broke every rule in evolutionary biology. Under high-resolution scanning, genetic fragments were recovered, partially degraded, but still organized in spiral structures. Not DNA exactly, but something similar. A molecule that could self-repair under heat and pressure. When the samples were heated, they reorganized instead of breaking down. It was like watching an extinct genome heal itself. I remember sitting there, staring at the monitor, thinking, this thing didn't just evolve, it edited itself. What kind of creature could rewrite its own genetic code when the environment changed? Was it even an animal, or something much older? Something that remembered what life used to be before extinction hit? That thought wouldn't leave me. When I compared its joint structure to early vertebrates, I found patterns that shouldn't exist. Geometric symmetry identical to multicellular organisms from the Cambrian period, hundreds of millions of years earlier. It was as if Aetherornis carried inside it the memory of every creature that came before. Evolution isn't supposed to work like that, but maybe it wasn't following evolution's rules. Maybe it was the one writing them. I tried to tell myself it was a coincidence. Pattern recognition, data, noise. But then I received an anonymous email. No subject, just coordinates in Patagonia and the words, "See it before they seal it again." When I arrived, the cliffs were howling with wind. A few researchers were digging quietly near the Satalis strata, the same layer where 47 bytes was found primata hoinethum. By sunset, one of them uncovered a vertebra, smooth, curved, glimmering faintly like polished glass. Under the microscope, there were still traces of collagen. Fresh collagen. That shouldn't be possible in something millions of years old. We ran isotopic tests. Some parts dated to 248 million years ago. Others to just 20,000. How can one specimen exist in two different times? The lead geologist looked pale. "You publish this," he said, "and you'll have to rewrite natural history." That night, I couldn't sleep. The cliffs felt alive. My instruments picked up low-frequency vibrations that pulsed at steady intervals, too rhythmic for wind, too deep for seismic activity. It almost felt like a heartbeat buried in stone. Weeks later, I received another message, this time from a retired field biologist who had spent decades exploring the Amazon. A claim had seen something like Aetherornis, alive. Not fossilized alive. He described a winged form that shimmered like metal under lightning, appearing during magnetic storms, moving in patterns that defied wind currents. "It's not an animal," he said. "It's an echo." I dismissed it as folklore until he sent a sketch. 2 long wings, a plated rib cage. A skull shaped like a bird's, but armored like a fish. It looked exactly like the fossil. Satellite radar later confirmed a strange reflection off the Chilean coast. A massive airborne object moving against 200 kilometers per hour winds. It shimmered, then vanished. Officially, radar noise. But if it was noise, why encrypt the footage? Why restrict the airspace for 3 days afterward? That's when I realized something uncomfortable. Evolution is supposed to be random, natural selection, mutation, adaptation. But this thing wasn't adapting. It was testing. It evolved like it had a purpose, like it was running an experiment. And maybe that experiment was us. When I analyzed avian genomes for comparison, I found a 1.4% match between Aetherornis and modern corvids. Ravens, crows, magpies. That might sound small, but statistically, it's impossible unless there's a shared ancestry. Those birds are the smartest of all. They solve puzzles, recognize faces, use tools, even more when they're dead. What if they inherited more than intelligence? What if they inherited the echo of something that refused to die? Sometimes, when I walk through cities and hear crows calling from rooftops, I wonder if they're not just watching but remembering. It made me think, maybe evolution isn't a straight line. Maybe it loops back, rewriting old blueprints, recycling forgotten code. Maybe Aetherornis was the first to master that loop. Evolution's archivist, keeping every version of life alive inside itself. But then a darker thought hit me. If it survived one extinction, could it survive another? Could it be waiting for the next reset, watching the planet climb toward collapse again? The last field recording I made near those cliffs still haunts me. The wind was silent, the sea unmoving. Then, out of nowhere, a pulse vibrated through the rock, deep, deliberate, like a heartbeat under my feet. My instruments showed perfect periodicity. Not random, not seismic. Patterned, intelligent. And for a split second, I saw light ripple along the ridge, like wings unfolding just beyond vision. Not glowing, reflecting, as if something metallic moved between layers of air, perfectly camouflaged against the dawn. It lasted less than a second, but I knew what I'd seen. I didn't tell anyone. I just stood there, listening, while the pulse faded back into stone. That's when it hit me. Maybe evolution isn't something we undergo. Maybe it's something that uses a system fine-tuning itself through trial and error, and Aetherornis was its first successful prototype. We think of life as fragile, but maybe it's just testing hardware, upgrading versions, moving from shell to shell. What if humans are just the next iteration, another phase in a much older design? The creature that outsmarted evolution might not have died at all. It might have changed shape, adapted, hidden, waiting for when the world resets again. And when it does, maybe it won't be fossils we find next time, but successors. Sometimes I play back that cliffside recording, that pulse, steady, rhythmic, deeper than thunder. Still plays beneath the noise. It's not the sound of wind or earth. It's something older, patient, listening. And when I hear it, I can almost imagine it whispering through the static. You learned well. Maybe that's the real paradox. Maybe the creature that outsmarted evolution isn't gone. Maybe it's just waiting to see if we survive long enough to meet it again. Or worse, to become it.